Hi there. We're here for another interview. And today we have someone joining us from Slinger, Wisconsin, which I like that name, who found us on social media through mutual friends. And she goes by Shelley, but her birth name is Amy Lynn. And she likes that. And if you look for her on social media, that's how you'll find her. Welcome.
Welcome. Glad to have you.
It's nice to be here.
It is nice to see you after we couldn't see you for a minute there because we're all working on our recording systems. So
Yes.
So let's dig in. Tell us your story from the beginning and how you want to get into it.
I was born in 1970, baby scoop era adoptee, adopted into a typical nice American family.
In Wisconsin?
In Wisconsin, yep. I've
Okay.
always been in the same area within a half an hour of where I live now. I was adopted. My parents had one other daughter who was their biological child. She's 7 years older than me. I believe they struggled with fertility issues with her and had her, and then didn't think they could have any other children. So they adopted me, and we're 7 years apart. Normal, typical middle class, nice family life. They were always open about my adoption. I always knew that I was adopted. I can't say I always understood what that meant. It meant different things to me at different ages, I would say. But I never thought much about it, I would say. It's interesting to me now that I'm like trying to discover everything. Back then, I feel like I didn't want to.
Mhm.
I just felt like it was a story more than anything. This happy little story they told me. My parents, were in college or just finishing high school, something like that is what they told me. And just, it wasn't a good time for them. So they, loved me so much, they chose to give me up for adoption. And my parents were always very open. If you want to search, we'll help you, those kind of things. But to be honest, we didn't really talk about it very much. I feel that I didn't ask much, so there wasn't much conversation about it. I'm sure they thought about it, watching me grow up. But I think if I wasn't asking, they weren't going to say much
And
about
even
it.
though you had an age difference, were you close to your sister?
I would say, I feel like when we were really little, maybe, but just that age difference, we had such different lives. I don't remember. There's a lot of times I don't remember her really being in the house because she probably wasn't, being 7 years older. She left for college for 1 year and then didn't stay in school, and then got pregnant and had a baby at 21, so was out of the house. So I feel like there's very scattered memories of growing up with her. I'm told, she was very excited when they got me and said she wouldn't, when they did the official adoption, she said they wouldn't trade me for all the money and all the banks in the world. I'm sure I'm sure she's changed her mind on that by now, but at the time, she was excited. But I'm sure it's impacted her as well. So we just went along with life.
Yeah.
People ever asked, we tell them the happy little story. It was never a challenge for me to talk about it. They would, always ask those questions. People always ask adoptees. And I basically just said, I just wish I knew if I look like somebody. I think that's all I really cared about at the time. So we didn't have a problem talking about it, but my parents didn't go around telling everyone either, unless it was the right situation. It would come up. They were very open about it, but they also didn't announce it like, this is my adopted child, nothing like that. I feel like there's times I even really forgot, to be honest, because the family was so blended. So I feel like they did everything that they were told to do correctly at that time. I can't say now looking back, everything was correct, but for the time, I think they tried their best to make it really comfortable for me.
And what do you know about why? I'm assuming it was fertility issues and everything, but do you know anything about, did they know anything about who gave you up or your biological mom or anything? Did they have any story about that?
It was very minimal. I always just remember they told me they were finishing high school and wanted to go on to college. That's the story they told me. So I'm assuming that's the story they were told. They didn't have much other information. They always told me I was fully Polish, was my ancestry. And they just said my mom was very, tiny, like 5 foot tall, very petite, and my dad was 5'8". Those are all the things I got, and I'm 5'2". So those are the only stories I remember hearing. She was very tiny, and I was very, a petite person. So
And they knew you were Polish.
Yeah, and they got that information, which is funny. Now that I know I am my mom's family is 100% Polish, but my dad's whole family's Irish. So I grew up all these years, nobody mentioned the Irish part. So I'm a
Yeah.
little sad and feel a little gypped that I didn't
I
know
had
that
that
until
too.
a couple
I
years ago.
had the Hungarian. I knew I was Hungarian, but like that was it. But I was, and I turned out to be a Hungarian. But
Yeah.
it's a strange, you're like, where's the other half?
Right. So I felt like I just assumed I was all Polish. And it's funny, but I feel like there was back then, like this thing about being Polish, like people
Yes.
joke, you know, Polak or things like that. So I felt like it's something that I didn't want to be. That now it sounds silly to me. I embrace that. But when I was young, maybe because people did tease that way, I was like, well, I'm just going to be what my adoptive parents are, German and English. So I just kind of didn't go with the Polish thing. And I'm not sure what, who made me feel that way, but
Yeah, I had the same thing because it was all about being hungry, like some weird thing. So I would just say I was German, like, oh, I'm like my parents, right? Like German and
right.
Brit and English, same thing.
Yeah, you get a choice, I guess.
Yeah.
So did you have a good relationship? So you had a good relationship growing up with your parents, or
I would say,
did,
go
yeah,
ahead.
go on. No. I was just trying to get a picture of.
Yeah, we always had a good relationship. Like I said, my sister and I, the age gap, I think I never felt like she wanted me around and things like that. But I think that was just that 7 years older. I just
Yeah.
always felt that. And now looking back deeper, there's probably more to that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Adoption caused her some trauma too that I wasn't aware of, But other than that, yeah, good parental relationship. I mean, I went through all the typical teen years and all of that, thinking it was normal. And now too, looking back, I can say there were a lot of struggles I had that were probably definitely connected to adoption at the time. I didn't connect that. I just thought, well, that's just me. Or you kind of think, oh, something's maybe wrong with me. And I feel like I bottled it up. Therapy wasn't a big thing then. That was very, people didn't think highly of that. You thought, if you're seeing a therapist, something was wrong with you.
Yeah.
I know my parents took good care of my health. If something would have been really blatant, they would have done that for me, but it just wasn't the norm then. So unless I was probably really having struggles, like maybe an eating disorder or suicidal ideation, they would have done more. So I feel like that would have really helped me with all my struggles, but that was the time.
It was the same. I just thought I was weird,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Like, don't discuss that. I'm just weird.
Exactly. I just think that I struggled with just relationships,
Yeah.
friend things, dating things. Now looking back, if I knew then what I know now, it would have been so different how I would have handled it.
Yes.
It was just
Right.
that trying to latch on or fear of being left kind of things, and that interfered with some friendships. I had some great friendships and had fun high school years and college years. That was great times. But if I really do look at things, there were a lot of relationships that could have been better or different had I been able to process my past trauma.
And have you gotten to, not to jump ahead, but so obviously you're through the looking glass at the moment, seeing what could have been, but don't you kind of feel, at least from so many adoptees we talk to, it isn't really until later in life that you can start to connect those dots and process that trauma, because having to be protective of protective maybe isn't the right word, but keeping things intact so that they don't all fall apart if you have those realizations early. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Makes sense to me.
I mean, I paid a lot of lip service in therapy. Yeah, I was adopted. I know I have abandonment issues, but I didn't really emotionally connect that or spiritually connect that. It doesn't, I think that's maybe true for even people that aren't adopted. Sometimes that trauma you can't connect to it until later in life. I don't know.
Right. And of course, I think therapy would help anybody. It's helpful for everyone for different things. So I think it would help me, but it's true. Maybe had they forced me into that, I probably would have been completely opposed to it, rejected it, been rebellious.
Also, there weren't therapists specializing in adoption at the time.
Right,
There barely are now, but it wasn't really studied. Relinquishment trauma wasn't a topic. So
you probably would have felt the same thing. You're just weird.
yeah,
They wouldn't have
yeah,
associated with adoption. Some don't even ask if you're adopted. So,
right.
No, they
yeah,
don't.
it might not have even been helpful, but had we known then what we know now, I think you look back and think, wow, things could have been so different.
Just the
Mhm.
reading alone, the things we
Yeah.
can absorb now and get off of the internet and just I had no knowledge like you. What so how did everything start to happen for you?
I think it would have been my late 30s before my adoptive mother passed away. When she was getting sick, I started to just think about, those things. You have moments where you're like, maybe I should know some of these things, or maybe when she's gone, I'll be sad or want somebody around. And it
Yeah.
just kind of came into mind. And she passed away when I was 40. And I know I had
And
been
had
thinking
you
about,
had kids up to that point, or?
yeah, I had my first son at 30, my second son at 35. And honestly, during that, I don't think I thought about it at all. Everyone said that
Really?
was their time. I don't think I even thought about my birth mother or birth father, other than being so excited that I look like somebody. That was a big thing for me, seeing if I look like somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Being a mom was always so important to me. That was just a part of life. You were going to be a mom. I wanted that so much. I was always very nurturing as a child, like playing with dolls, things like that. So I feel like, too, I think that was a part of it as well. I just didn't understand why it was so important to me. So when I had my sons, it was great to have people that finally look like me. I remember people would even say something about them looking like my husband. I think inside I felt like it hurt me a little. I didn't
Yeah.
say anything, but inside I was like, no, like they have to look like me, so that part of it. But other than that, when I had my sons, I didn't think much about it. I think it was really when my mom got sick and was dying, and she passed away when I was 40. I started to really think about it. But again, I would think about it. I'd Google some things about looking up Wisconsin laws or what's going on. And I would see, oh, there's forms you fill out and fees. And then it would just kind of go out of my mind because life was busy with two little boys. So I didn't think much about it. And it was a process. Things weren't as online then. You had to fill out all this paperwork. It just seemed tedious. And not that it was that expensive, but it's just another thing to pay for or send in checks. So I think I would forget about it again. And again, I remember looking at the rules, making sure to see if I could look for stuff, but they couldn't find out things. Like I wanted to be able to see what I wanted to see and then know that I had my privacy.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why I look back and I think I had this fear of them. Like, I think that's maybe why I kept it in my subconscious as a child. I know other adoptees say they always wondered and had these fantasies. I don't believe I did, but for some reason I thought like it scared me. Like they would have been strangers. They weren't the people that raised me. They weren't my parents in my eyes. So I think I felt more afraid of that. Like if they came around, I think I would have been afraid. And I don't think my adoptive parents did anything, like tried to make me afraid of them, because they kept the story very basic. Oh, they just were high school students wanting to finish college. They didn't say anything demeaning, but I think I had this fear of what I would find. I don't know, maybe I just didn't think I could have came from anyone good, or you had this assumption if they gave you up to your mom, there was something wrong with her.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
I had that too. Like,
well, I think
don't-
that's a societal thing. I
Yes,
don't
it
think
is.
any of it.
It's layered in. We don't
Mhm.
even know.
Yeah, there's this deep subconscious fear that there was either something wrong with them,
Yeah.
they weren't going to be good people, and it scared me. So when I did start to look, I was like more concerned about my own privacy. And then after my mom passed away, like I said, I started thinking about it more and more. And getting older, I'm like, wow, I'm a nurse. Medical information is important. I should get this for my son. So finally in 2018, I really was like, I need to do this. I need to make a point of doing this. And I told my husband, and he's like, sure, why not? Like, what could go wrong? I think he literally said that, like, what's the big deal? He's like, if you find them and it's not a good situation, we just don't connect. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. No big deal at all.
And you told your sons too?
I originally had been thinking about either doing it all myself with nobody knowing at first. And then I said, well, I need my husband involved. And then I decided just our family, the four of us, would be involved, and they were all on board with it. So just the four of us knew at first. And I promised myself January 1st of 2019 that I registered on Ancestry, or I got my kit and I spit in my tube on January 1st. I filled out my paperwork for the state of Wisconsin, did everything on that day when I was at home. I just remember it was kind of a big day to start the process.
And what came of that?
Well, I first got information from the state. It was, I think, she was communicating with me saying she got my paperwork and everything, and she was going to be the person helping me. On February 13th, which is really strange because that was the day of my relinquishment, my court date, she called me and said she had found my birth mother and she is alive. And she couldn't tell me location or anything, but she said, I have spoke to her. She said she was just really in shock, obviously, when I called her and wondered if you were okay, and like what, like kind of why now, maybe after, 48 years or whatever it was at the time. And then they asked her, how she wanted to proceed. And she said, well, I just need to talk to my husband. So she called me and told me all this. And then she was able to read a bunch of the unredacted information for me, which was really helpful. She's like, oh, it looks like, there's a lot of professional people in your family, and just read all these nice things, I think, to comfort me and make me know it was okay. So I waited.
It's nice to know there's some decent people in the system doing this.
Right. So I was
kind.
It felt good, at the time.
Yeah.
So she's like, you just, patience is key. I'm not going to, call her every day and bother her. Just give it some time. So over the next few weeks, she kind of communicated with me and said, okay, I haven't heard back. I'm just going to wait, be patient. And about a week and a half later, I got my DNA results. With those, it was on Ancestry. I had like maybe a third cousin, but when I looked up the cousin on Facebook, I'm like, wow, she's older than me, lives on a lake right near me. This is really interesting, neat. And then I looked, we had mutual Facebook friends. Somebody I went to nursing school with was friends with her. So I'm like, oh, that's a good way I can connect with.
This was your first cousin?
A third cousin.
Oh, a third cousin.
So distant, but I'm like, well, I can use this mutual Facebook friend just to say, hey, this person that's going to message you is not crazy. I know her. We went to nursing school together. I found out this third cousin was also a nurse, which was interesting. So I got a search angel right away, and she's like, oh yeah, with this information, give me a few days, but I can probably figure this out for you. And she also advised if I wanted to go onto the other DNA sites and transfer my raw DNA for free. So I'm like, sure. So a couple days later, I wake up in the morning to a ding on my phone. I look and I have my heritage results. And I open it up and I matched to my birth mother and my birth father. And I was shocked. It's like 5 a.m. I'm like, oh my God, is this what I think it is? So I sent it to her right away. She's like, yeah, that's what you think it is. She's like, they must be looking for you. They are both on there. And then she's like, let me just do some research. So right away, she did some research. She's like, I think they're still together. She's like, your mom uses both last names, but it appears they're together. They live in New Mexico now. She was able to pull up all kinds of stuff.
That's why she had to speak to her husband.
Right, exactly. Well, and I was thinking it was going to be a different husband.
Right.
Yeah. Like
Me
I have
too.
to tell him now.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was excited and I didn't know how to proceed, but I sent them each a separate message on my heritage, just a very obviously polite general message. So I'm like, okay, let's wait and see. And then in the meantime, I did contact the person at the state and let her know I got my results. And I feel like once I told her that, even though she and I had talked about people do that, I feel like once I told her that, the whole feeling changed.
Oh.
She got more close. She would listen to me. And instead of I felt like you can listen to somebody and say, I can't confirm anything you're saying. You could be compassionate. But I feel like all that was there at the beginning was lost. And I just felt like it became negative. And if I could go back, I don't know if I'd even tell her now that I found out what I did. Because
I wonder what that was all about.
I don't know. I wonder
control or something.
Control, being afraid of saying the wrong thing, all the laws, and then I asked her to send me all my redacted papers for now. She's like, we can wait to see if she's gonna.
You're like, no.
Yeah, she's like, we can wait to see if your mom's gonna agree to open them all up, or I can send them now redacted. I'm like, well, send them now redacted. We can change it later. So she sent them, and it was interesting to be able to read through all that, but she didn't miss a single thing redacting. I know people say sometimes they miss stuff. I looked through that and she had everything covered up. But now I knew the information. So I don't know if she thought I was being maybe cocky that I knew the information. I don't know, but
so strange.
it
It's
just
like,
changed
hello,
so
I'm a
much.
baby. This is my birth. And
Yeah.
I've still
I
never
wish-
seen mine. I've wrote to Colorado still. And my parents didn't have it. I don't have my non-identifying, even though I know things, I'd still like to see it.
Right. As a nurse, I feel like there's a way to keep privacy and just say, I'm so sorry, I can't share this, but be compassionate with my conversations with her.
Yes. Yeah.
And we didn't talk a
Strange.
lot then. Then in the meantime, my search angel was looking up all the information, gathering stuff about my
But so you
parents.
had sent a message though on MyHeritage.
Yeah, so I sent a message, and who knows if they even saw it. I found out they had retired. They did their DNA the end of 2017, and I did mine at the beginning of 2019. So literally a year apart. So when they did theirs is when I was really thinking about doing mine. I just hadn't done it. And I can see my birth father did his first, and then she did hers a couple days after Christmas. And I did later find out they got it as a Christmas gift, or he gave it to her as a Christmas gift. So in the meantime, I was just waiting, being patient. I'm like, they're 69 years old. I have time. Let's just wait this out. I had their phone numbers and everything at this point, because you just Google and everything is there. And then I called the number one day just to see. I'm like, I just got to see if this is their number. And my father was on I think it's an answering machine, very old school sounding, but it was his voice saying that he named my mom's name. We're not home right now. Link and I aren't home right now. So I was like, this is definitely them. Wow. But I was being patient. I was trying to connect with other cousins just because I didn't know what I was dealing with still. My letter, when you fill out Wisconsin paperwork, you get to write a little letter. Why do I want to do this? And that was very generic because I didn't know. So I didn't even tell them that I wanted identifying information. I just said, thank you for giving me life. I'd like medical information, because I didn't know what I was dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Once I got all the information from them and found out, very professional people, highly educated, there was nothing to be afraid of. Then I was more open to saying, okay, I could meet them or talk to them or know them. So in the meantime, I found a cousin on Facebook who's a first cousin, and coincidentally through some searching, she used to be married to my best college friends, like her friend growing up's brother. So small world.
That is small world.
Yeah, we went to college together, not at the same time, the same college. So all these connections, we were so close. Several of my first cousins went to the same college I did in Wisconsin.
Were they open? Like you started writing with her and having a relationship?
Well, this first one, my friend contacted her good friend to let her know what was going on. And then my cousin was like, oh my gosh, like, wow, this is a lot to process, but I will get in touch with her. She's an extremely sweet person. But I do think she was very cautiously handling this because she didn't know what to do. So we messaged on Messenger, and she's like, I'm here, I want to talk to you. Just wow. She's like, out of respect, I just need to process this. She's like, I have one sister, and my dad, her mother, my dad's sister, had passed away a couple years ago. She's like, I just want to talk to them and really process how to move forward with it. And I just
did she tell you if you had any siblings?
Well, I already was pretty sure I didn't, but she did say no, that you don't. She basically, confirmed good people, very professional. They moved away. I mean, she loved them, but they didn't really see each other much. They kind of just moved away when we were
they
very
stayed
little.
together. They stayed together and didn't have other children.
No other children. It appears very career focused. My dad eventually got his PhD. He was a special education middle school teacher, and then worked at a university. And I think he was teaching special education middle school level educators. I was told he went all over the country and spoke like as a keynote speaker at conferences, things like that. So I found out he was very social, everyone I've talked to that's met him, I just have nothing but these amazing stories. I've connected with so many people that knew him, and I feel like when I find these people, they're just overjoyed to hear from me and to be like, wow, I can talk about your dad and share something.
So really, have you not met them yet?
Well, then I was waiting, I communicated with my cousin a little bit. She's like, let me just figure out how to move forward. She said they were good people. I wanted to find out because I had a feeling, my thought was they're very professional, no kids. Are they just going to be the type that are not going to be interested? Just like, sorry, we're not interested. I wanted to get that feeling from her. So we were communicating back and forth. And of course, it's days between communications. She's living her life. waiting, trying to be patient, but dying. So it was, I can't remember how many weeks it was, 5 weeks or so. We were, from the time when I first talk to the woman at the state, then I get these other results, and then I find my cousin. It took a week for each of these things to happen. So I communicate with my cousin, I'm waiting on her. And then I was doing another search for a first cousin on my mom's side that I had figured out who she was. I grabbed a search angel just online real quick on DNA detectives and was like, can you help me get some contact info on her? She said, sure. And she was looking the info up and then said, do you know who your birth parents are? And I said, yes, I matched with them. I know who they are. But I'm like, go ahead and look for more information because you never know. So she came back and said, I'm so sorry, your birth father passed away.
No.
And I was like, no, his name is so common, you have the wrong name. She's like, no, I mean a couple of days ago. This was Thursday, Monday.
Come on.
I was like, oh my gosh. So I look, and sure enough, there was a very basic obituary that he had passed away on Monday. So I messaged that other cousin, that knew, and I was like, I just have to offer my condolences to you. And she's like, no, I need to offer my condolences to you. I found out he had had a heart attack in his sleep. So this couple weeks, I thought I was just being, extremely kind and patient. He was only 69. He passed away. So you can imagine.
That's what you said. You said they were 69. I was thinking, you have some time.
Yeah. So then you just kick yourself. Like the day I called the phone, nobody answered, but I would have kept trying to call because the whole family is like, he would have talked to you. He was just that kind of person. And they all think why would they both do their DNA if they weren't looking for me? Unless he
or at least wanted to be found, open to being found.
Right, something. My mom worked at the new movie out, Oppenheimer.
Mm-hmm.
She worked at the lab, the Los Alamos National Lab that the movie is based on. So she is a microbiologist, and that was my first bachelor's degree, which is interesting. So she understands DNA. I think I even Googled you Google somebody's name and you find out research they've done. And she was involved on some little part of the Human Genome Project. So I know she gets it. Because there's people who have said, even the social work states like, oh, so many people do their DNA and don't even understand what happened.
Yeah, she understood.
I'm like, I'm sorry. And I told her that because I know more than her about my parents. She was like, oh, I'm like, no, they knew whether she wanted to or not. She knew what she was doing when it happened. So the social worker tried to get in touch with her more, and my mom just couldn't do it. She was just obviously so sad about losing him so tragically. The timing was just really bad. I think no other children to help her through the process. And even all my relatives here, I'm connected with a lot of people on my dad's side and a few on my mom's side. They all just say like, we feel like we don't know her. She was seemed very sweet and kind, but very guarded. Whenever my dad would come home to visit, she would only come if it was something very big. Like there was one wedding over the years and a couple funerals, but otherwise she always had a reason why she couldn't come.
It was always him. He was the social.
Yeah.
And he's the one who did the DNA.
Was she from Wisconsin herself, or was she from elsewhere?
They were both from the south side of Milwaukee area. So they were both from very close areas. I think he maintained a very good relationship with his family. Hers, I think, was very broken from when she left after graduating from high school. There was several years where I'm told she wasn't talking to her parents, maybe talked to one sister. She has two sisters that are younger. That's why nobody knew about me when they were pregnant with me.
Yeah.
I still don't 100% know if my dad knew because I don't know if they were in a relationship then. I'm piecing together redacted information and stories from other people. Everyone assumes they did know each other. I mean, they at least knew each other.
So we don't know when she says on the letter, I have to talk to my husband. Maybe she has to talk to her husband for two different reasons. Either our daughters found us or we had a daughter and I gave her up.
Right. So she had said on my paper, she had known him for 3 years when she got pregnant. And I think that's true because I did find out he was in a band in high school and she went to all girls Catholic school, which I did too. Another weird thing. And none of our siblings did, just us. So some strange alignments we have. And his band would come play there. And I know this because I have a second cousin who went to that high school, was a little younger, and she remembers all of this. And on the obituary that was shown to me, this cousin had put a little message saying, I'm so sorry for your loss. And she told this whole story. she gave her name saying, I'm his cousin. He used to play at my high school, and she named the high school, and I would go see him there. So she gave me all this vital information to find her. I'm like, I know what high school she went to. I can find this cousin. And she was very open and welcoming when I found her right away to help me in any way she could. She lived in another state too. So that helped put together all of these pieces. But up to this point, it's been 4.5 years, and my birth
Still
mother has
nothing.
still nothing. I have tried all different ways to connect. I don't want to be overly pushy. The first year I just couldn't push it. I'm like, I sent a letter, but I'm like, I can't do anything else. She's hurting.
Oh, you did send a letter.
I did.
Oh,
But it
okay.
was again that very generic
Yes, I don't
letter.
want to be pushy and intrude.
We've done other things over the few years, but like I send Christmas cards, I don't get anything back. I don't even put a return address because I'm like, I don't really want them back. And I am in contact with her sister, but her sister never knew. So again, she will not, as far as I know, she will not be the one to interject and say anything. They live states away. This sister lives in Illinois. So we talked on the phone once, and then we just text. She sent me pictures, and she tries to be really helpful, but it's not the kind of helpful I'm hoping for. But again,
It's like, it's maybe
generation.
your mom is, sounds very, well, first of all, I'm sure it was a lot of pain she probably went through to give you up. And then she may be very a scientific type of mind where she can't really deal with the emotions of this. It's hard.
Yeah.
4.5 years. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I do think that's a lot of it. I just don't, and you think, okay, what things did I try to do that were wrong? Things like that. I left a voicemail once. Of
Really?
course, the first time I had it all planned out, written out what to say. And then she answers the phone, and I panicked because anytime
And you
I
hung
called
up?
her, I did, because I wasn't prepared for it. I'm like, oh my God, that's not what was supposed to happen. She doesn't answer the phone. So then I hung up. So like, now what do? I wait a few minutes. I'm like, okay, I just need to call back. And if she answers, that's meant to be. And then of course she didn't. So then I left the voicemail. So I've done
Do you
all
think
these,
she knew it was you? Like
I
phone numbers? I mean, we see
don't
numbers
know.
come in.
And we get the feeling, it's funny, I've been told by cousins who, have this minimal connection with them, that they were very old school. My one cousin that I meet with a lot has said it was annoying your dad didn't even like to text. So I do think they had a landline. And when you listen to the message, it truly sounded like an answering machine versus voicemail. So it's very
Hello,
old.
you've reached the home of
Right.
Oh,
Yeah. So
Tom and Jane.
Yeah. So I've connected with all these different people, gather information. And eventually with my aunt, I just kind of texted her, kind of played her situation because I didn't want to lose contact with her. I felt like she could be a big help to me. And the first couple of years didn't really, other than asking for pictures and questions, I didn't ask her to intervene. She just said, I hope this works. I pray for you. Your mom probably is so sad she can't even say the words. She said all the typical
nice things.
sugar-coated things, right? And at first I was fine with it. And then we had 1 year of that. I figured, okay, my mom's had a year to deal with my dad's loss. And then COVID happened. So then people, I feel like, got really weird. Everybody was hiding and weird. And, so I didn't think that was a good time to really broach it. We sent Christmas cards and did things like that. But again, that was a weird time too. So I don't know if that helped her heal. And then a couple years in, I did start asking my aunt if she could, don't you think it'd be good if she knew somebody knew so you could talk? I was kind of hinting around, and she's like, I could never do that. I could never, ever do that. That was her secret if she can't tell me. And oftentimes I wondered, I'm like, are they just lying and they are talking about it? But I feel like my aunt would just tell me that. I guess my gut is everyone says, why wouldn't they just tell you that they talked about it and she can't do this? It would be very simple. And then I would know. And I would still talk.
She probably just doesn't have that close relationship with her to broach that.
Right. And she acts like they have this close relationship, but I believe it was one of those over the years, up and down, living far away from each other. Neither had children. They were living their own lives. But when my dad died, I think she had to have this close, like she's like, I call her every day and started to go visit. But my gut feeling, it wasn't that way before he died, maybe. Or maybe certain times she would tell me about taking trips out there. But when you talk to others, you're like, they're like, I don't know if it was that close, or if she's just telling you that to make it sound like this nice, everything has to sound nice and happy. So then maybe months later, I broached the topic again. She's like, well, maybe at some point I will, but not at this point. Like I'm not
Ay,
to. So I'm like, okay, it's something. So I just keep that contact with her, but it's again, I get pictures once in a while. It's not helpful to me at all.
it's so frustrating. I can't stand it for you.
It is, and there's nobody
No,
else that's close with her. People have sent her, obviously they all sent her condolence cards when he passed away. She didn't do a funeral or anything. She said he didn't want that. And everyone tried to call, and everyone's trying, and they'll get the random call. There's very little connection. They're surprised if they get a call back. Usually they don't. They send letters, they don't get anything back. Eventually, he passed away. It was April 1st. October 31st was their anniversary date. And that day she finally sent everyone in the family, his family, this little card saying, I'm spreading his ashes at this nature preserve. He liked, make a toast at whatever time tonight. And know that, that's kind of what they're doing as his memorial. So they all got that from him. And that was it. That summer, she finally wrote this really nice obituary, which was for me like a biography. It took her months to write it, but it was in their little local paper. Somebody got wind of it and sent it to me. And I'm like, this is great because it tells all these things he did throughout his life. And it was really a nice thing for me to get. And all of his family say, if he were alive, this would be different. This would be such a different
that's
thing.
sad.
Yeah. And I do believe that. They're even like,
Yeah.
even if she didn't want to, he would. Because it sounded like he came here all the time and visited without her when she didn't want to come.
She's an extreme introvert, possibly. I mean,
and
that's
I think back and I do think it's her trauma.
Right. That's
hear all this story,
people handle things differently, and we can't guess
Yes,
until we
no.
know, but
Right. I'm guessing on so many things, but when
right.
you piece all the pieces together from all the different people that connect with me, and nobody is saying like she's just a mean person, she was cold. They're all
No.
like, my cousins have few memories from when they were little, when they still lived in Wisconsin, of some holidays. And they said, it was really nice. She would sit and play Barbies with us or dolls while the adults were off talking. They have these very minimal memories. Or one cousin, they went to visit them one time in New Mexico, and she's like, she let me drive her car, just they're like, she was very sweet and kind, but just guarded. And then I think when they all found out about me, they were like, this
Wow.
piece that they didn't understand
Yeah.
about her, they're like, oh, this explains a lot. People always wonder, why didn't they have kids? My dad was a middle school level educator. He loved kids. There's so many things that didn't make sense. But now I think to them, they're like, wow, this all makes sense. I think honestly, they just worked and focused on their careers. On the weekends, I was told he would go camping and do a lot of stuff, sometimes on his own. And he even went to different states to get some of his degrees. Like his master's, he got in Vermont many years later. So he moved away from her to do that. So I heard they kind of had a long distance where they would fly and visit each other. So, and these are all pieced together stories from all cousins, first cousins, distant cousins, who just give me all the information that they recall. But it's not a ton. It's not a ton. Even I have a cousin on my mom's side. There's only one cousin. She said her parents got divorced, but her dad, when my dad would come visit, would even get together with him for lunch. She's like, my parents were divorced, and my dad would get together with your dad because he just liked him a lot, and they would have lunch, and she would join them, and she remembered, their political conversations they would have. Her dad was very conservative. My dad was very liberal. So she's like, they would have some very lively conversations, but always respectful. So I just hear wonderful stories about him. I feel like something was telling me that year before to do it when I wanted to do it, because that's, he did his at that time. And then even stranger, I found a match came up one day that I never saw before. And there was no name on it. So I connected with the person, and it happened to be this older man's wife. And she said, oh yeah, a few years ago, he was trying to figure out who his birth father is. He's sick now. He doesn't really care anymore. But I'm like, well, like, do you care if I figure it out? Because I think I can with the search angel. So through that, I had a distant cousin in California that did a lot of family history. I talked to her, and we were trying to figure this out. And I'm like, why don't you send your DNA to my heritage if you want to? And she's like, sure. So we get the results back. It was her dad's half brother that he never knew about.
Oh.
So
Interesting.
this older man, she's like, her dad had passed away. She's like, he'll never know he had this half brother out there. So from, the past. So, or was it her grandpa, I think it was his half brother. I can't remember how it went, but either way, a very close family member. So I said, this is your person. These are close to you. I'm going to let you guys, connect on that. So she connected them. I don't think he ever wanted to meet, but she talked through his wife. So at least he knew who his father was. And then during this process, the wife said to me, she's like, well, somebody was helping us a few years ago do this, but we couldn't figure it out. So we gave up. And she's like, yeah, a man, James in New Mexico, was helping us. And I'm like, that's my birth father. I was adopted. I didn't know. So she's like, yeah, he was super nice trying to figure it out. There were just too many sibling possibilities of who the father could be. There were 13 siblings. So she's like, he never figured it out. He finally gave up because he didn't know about search angels or genealogy.
Your father would have been into finding you if he's helping other people find people.
Yeah, he was literally trying to, and that made me feel good. I'm like, you know what, this job he didn't finish. I'm sure he would be proud knowing that me with a search angel got to the bottom of this. Whether this man really cared now or not, we answered a question. And then this cousin in California now knows she has some family. She was able to tell her mom, her dad's no longer alive, but she was able to say, look you've got this, family member. And he had been raised with his mom. This man had been raised by his mom. So he knew his mom, but the dad was just a quick thing. And this man went on to do that other times too. So he looked like
wow. So back to you. What are you just going to kind of keep what you're doing and reach out once in a while? And
my husband talked to her once, actually. It was in 2020, the day before my 50th birthday. So 2020 was kind of a weird year, but he knew it was okay to do it, but he didn't tell me he was doing it. He called her and, of course, the answer machine went on and he left a message and it cut him off and he didn't get his phone number on there. So he called back and then she answered. And he's like, Shelley, I knew that she knew it was me. He's like, I feel like it was the answer machine. She could hear it and she picked up. And they had about maybe a 15-minute conversation. He was very emotional after he came home, kind of teary. And he said he basically did all the talking. He's like, I just shared about us, our life. We're nice people. Like, just said you would just really like to connect somehow. And he said she was just very emotional. Didn't say a lot, kind of teary, just like, challenging for her to talk. And he eventually knew, okay, I should let you go. But he said, may I tell Shelley that we've talked? And she said yes. And he said, may I call you again someday? And she said yes, and I don't know if he left his phone number or not. So he did try to, and then he sent her flowers that Christmas, and she took them. So we've been doing that at Christmas, sending flowers. So
you're getting in there a little.
It sounds like yes, just whatever she's got thick deep walls and maybe eventually it'll happen.
Yeah, so I feel like just time, and you never know what somebody's time frame is. And
right, exactly.
Some days I get mad or frustrated, but I have to remind myself also that there's a time when I didn't want this either. So what would I have done if they would have come to me 20, 30 years ago? I don't know how I would have handled it. Now I decided it's my time. And the timing was horrible for her. Certainly I didn't intend on that. And there are people that think, well, this is perfect. She would have you. She has literally nobody else other than her cats and my aunt far away. So it seems like a perfect time, but my gut is just the shame and guilt are getting her. And my cousins, there was the one cousin she talked to after my dad died. She would talk to her every couple weeks. But I really feel that like she didn't want to call anybody here. She was so traumatized by his death that she gave her kind of the job of, can you tell people? So my cousin did that for her, gave her email addresses, phone numbers, told people for her. And then eventually she sent that little thing, saying she was having a little memorial. And then after that, she did not call my cousin. My cousin and I are pretty close. We meet every month or so. And she too, one time my mom said to her, I'm just so lonely. Since I never had kids. And my cousin's like, I was just dying to say something. But she's like, it was too soon. This was just a couple months after my dad had died. So then my cousin continues to call her and she never calls back. She never calls back.
Oh,
so again, everyone's back in this, like she's in this won't talk to anybody thing. And my cousin's like, maybe she knows that you and I have talked, I don't know, but she won't call back. Then this past Christmas, my cousin texted me on Christmas. She's like, you'll never believe who called me today. And I'm like, well, I can guess. So we talked, and she told me that my mom said she called all 3 girl cousins on that side. 2 of them answered, the other one didn't answer. It was Christmas Day. I thought that was very interesting. She got the courage to call all 3 of them on Christmas Day. The one that didn't answer, I had lunch with her right after Christmas, and she's like, I'm calling her today when I get home. She called her and had to leave a voicemail and still has not heard from her all this time again. And when the cousin that did talk to my mom said, I want to try to keep in touch more. I want, to be better about that. And my cousin's like, you should come visit Wisconsin sometime. And they had a really nice conversation about a lot of things. And then again, now she's not answering her calls.
Well,
my cousin doesn't want to be pushy. She's like, I maybe call once a month and leave a voicemail. She doesn't want to be bothersome, but so it's interesting.
It is.
Is all I can say. I just think she's very closed off. Who knows what she's wondering. An older relative did send a letter. The cousin that I found via the first obituary, her father is a deacon. He just turned 90. And when this all happened, he was like, this is great, so he sends her a letter of condolences and also asking like what the burial plans are, because he's very Catholic, and not maybe realizing my parents, I think, were kind of hippies. That wasn't their thing, be Catholic anymore. And then he brought up me in this letter saying, she found us and she's wonderful. What a wonderful thing for you. I think God did this, she has a wonderful family. So he had the best heart doing that, but he did it, I think, like this was the month that my dad died. So who knows how she
it might have been taken a little bit like people know my business. And
and he did, like, I didn't know he did this till after he did it. He told me, and then like, what am I going to do? I'm like, he had a good heart. It's not like, I wouldn't have definitely told him. If
you can't control it.
No. Right. I would have said no. I did not think he would do that, but he thought he was helping. So who knows if some of these things have made her unhappy, but in the long run, it's like, it's been 4.5 years.
Well,
people don't handle things the right way. I hope that wouldn't be something she'd be holding a grudge on.
No, it does. Yeah, I can't imagine. Will you please keep us posted on what happens? Because I'm sure that this isn't, there will be more to tell.
Yeah, I think there's so much more to happen, I hope. And there's I've had so many serendipitous things happen through this process. So many people I found via Facebook that either lived in her small town that I've connected with, even an adoptee, and like the community used to live there. So, I mean, I've had just the things that have happened. I'm like, the universe wants this. There's only one person that I feel like doesn't want this.
Or not yet.
Right. Or not yet, just isn't ready.
Yeah.
At one point I connected with the social worker again, and I stopped doing that because I don't think they're helpful. I almost feel like they unintentionally made it worse for her.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe it brings back trauma. Having
they probably treat her a certain way. It's like a weird system thing.
They send you certified letters. They do all these things. So if I could do it over, I would have just kept them out of it, because I don't think they're helping. And I've heard a lot of other people from my state. We all know the same people that work on the cases, and there has been a lot of similar stories. And I think the person who works there now probably doesn't really like many of us anymore, because we have there's a group in Wisconsin. We had her come. They asked her to come and talk to us about. So she thought she was coming to talk to us about helping people search. And when she came, half the people in the group had already searched via the Zoom and had things that they weren't happy about. So I think she left this situation feeling very like, whoa, this was not good. But I think it was good. We needed to tell her that. And I think the powers that be heard that. And after that, they wanted more information from us about.
Okay, good.
I don't know if it'll change, but I think it was good, even though she wasn't happy about it. And hopefully she learned something.
This is for the better for the. It's not about her feelings. I mean, like hello, yeah.
Is Fred Nicora in that group?
He comes to the group sometimes. Yeah,
I see him post about this. Yeah.
And
we love Fred.
Yeah, Fred's awesome. So he's a part of my Adoptees Connect group that I co-facilitate. But it's always on days that he has. So he goes to different places to sell his products. So he hasn't been able to attend. But yeah, there's so many people, we all have had the same negative experience with the system. And not to blame any of the staff, but the system is horrible.
It's a system that's horrible. Yeah.
And they are covering their butts. But I do think you can be compassionate and cover your
100%. Yeah.
And we were all able to voice that to her. And it felt so good. It was the best feeling I've ever had after this meeting. I know she wasn't happy after. And it doesn't mean the laws will change, but I hope it helped her in the future, how she deals with other people.
Yeah.
And I know she did talk to my mom again. I did reach out again I think it was in 2020 as well. Like right before my husband called, I reached out to her and she was going to kind of initiate another attempt. And again, she talked to my mom and my mom was just very teary and sad. And she did say, your mom just said she's like, she's not ready. She needs to figure out her life. And, and then she asked my mom about doing DNA because I think my mom might have alluded to, well, how does she even know this stuff? And she's like, well, so you do know you did your DNA, like, and then she was like, oh yeah, I forgot. We got it as a Christmas gift. So I don't know if that was like, she was in denial or she was just kind of lying to the social worker because she hadn't shared it. But it gives me
hopefully you're going to get these answers, not third party at some point. And please do just keep us posted. It was really wonderful to have you and hear your story. It's so intertwined and really great.
Yep. So we just wait. But my husband's really concerned that I'm going to regret because something's going to happen to her. And he's worried about that. He's like, you're so upset you didn't call your dad. Now what? Like, how long do you wait if you need to see her before you just go? So that is my next plan, is that I'm just going to go there. I feel like
I was going to ask you if you were going to go there.
I can't change what she does. I'm not expecting anything positive to come from that other than for me to be able to say, I need to see you in the flesh. And now I can say I've seen you. And if that changes her in any way, great. If she doesn't, at least that's my piece, that I've seen you. My door's always open and I'll at least have that.
I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
It's hard because I mean, the pictures we see that I've gotten from everybody, I mean, we look so much alike. It scares my husband and my sons. They're like crazy. Even her.
I was going to say one thing, that she may see a little bit of her husband in you as well. That may be very painful.
Yeah. And that's what I thought. And I'm like, in one way, maybe it's cool. People think it's good, but it could hurt because I look at his pictures and I definitely see things. And I think she would see much more. She'll be the one that will look and say, whoa. But she and I, it's kind of scary, like twins. And so I need to see that. I mean, somebody that looks that much like me, maybe if she didn't, I wouldn't feel as compelled to see her. But knowing that, I'm like, I need to see you in the flesh just one time.
Please tell us if you do it.
Yeah, I do.
I won't tell anyone before I go because I don't want anyone
tell us.
Any of the family to somehow, not that anyone would tell her, but it's going to have to be kind of a
to your
mission.
Yeah.
Incognito.
Right. Exactly.
She's used to top secret missions with her Los Alamos. She understands top secret missions.
Right. Exactly.
Thank you, Shelley, so much for coming on. Really appreciate your sharing and your vulnerability. Really, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you on the socials.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
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 Bye.